When I was arrested again in 2006 for the 6th OWI, I went to Portage County Jail, and they have a social worker that works there, and he got me an appointment with a psychiatrist, and they were able to diagnose me then with bipolar disorder and put me on medication. And I did a lot of research and found out a lot of the things that I had been experiencing in that 15 years was related to my mental illness, not necessarily that I was a bad person. A lot of the behaviors, the risky behaviors like drinking and driving, going 108 miles an hour down the highway, spending money I don't have, things of that nature were a direct correlation with bipolar disorder.
What happened was in the 60s and 70s, there was a movement called deinstitutionalization, getting people out of institutions and into community, but the money never followed. And so now, de facto, our jails, our prison and correctional system is our new mental health and substance abuse treatment system. That's not what it's built for.
The percentages are just astronomical when it comes to, especially women that are incarcerated. They say it's 66% of women report a mental illness. I know it's higher than that because a lot of people don't report it in prison because there's a stigma attached to it. Standing in the med line is not cool when you're in prison. Unless you have cancer, then it's okay, but not if you have a mental illness.
We're learning more and more that people with mental illnesses are being put into solitary confinement, and solitary has a way at working on your mind that isn't healthy in the first place, even if you are a healthy and fit person.
Basically, you're there with yourself, with your thoughts. I started looking at my life and I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to get out. I didn't care if I lived or died, and I did not care if what would come next. I wasn't even thinking about when I got out. I was highly medicated again.
And so if a person is confined to a room and can't interact with other people very much, then there's no meaningful treatment we can give them other than medication. And we have to arrange an environment where they can be out of that situation so that they can be practicing the behaviors that we want them to practice.
The other really, I would say, overlooked piece is related to trauma. People's experience with particularly early childhood trauma, that we're now seeing significant effects on brain development. We are seeing significant effects on what we might categorize as mental illness, or we might look at as substance abuse. Substance abuse is often a consequence of self-medicating for a lot of the anxiety, depression, those sorts of things that go on.
At the age of 5, I was sexually abused by one of my mom's friends. And I remember telling her, but all I saw was violence. She took him and threw him out the thing. So I perceived that as, don't talk about it anymore. Because if you talk about it, and I learned at a very young age, if you talk about it, then it makes it real.
What we need to understand is that these individuals, they're going to live with us. Almost all the people that come to prison get out. And if we don't treat them in a way that allows them to succeed when they get out, first of all, from a humanitarian point of view, that's questionable on our part. But second of all, from an instrumental point of view, from a public policy and public safety point of view, if we don't treat them in a way that makes it likely that they'll succeed, then we're going to have somebody else getting hurt.
So I got arrested for, I fell asleep in my front lawn. I was still on probation, and there were officers there that were trying to wake me up. I got up and I was violent, and I spat at them. I was woke up fighting. So that ensued a new crime. And then I got another year in prison.
So when you have an interaction with the police, there's not a lot of control, and many times the police don't have a lot of options. Their option is usually take you to jail. We have made great improvements with CIT officers and law enforcement being more informed about understanding mental health and substance abuse.
Crisis intervention training is a 40-hour training that officers go through, and through that training they develop skills to not only work with people with mental illness, but hopefully also to recognize it on the front end.
So then police officers were bringing, CIT officers bringing people to jail, and they said, corrections doesn't understand mental health and substance abuse, so a training was created for corrections. And then corrections kind of said, well, we're releasing people and they don't have any supports. So then that partnership grew with other health and human services. So that ripple has been really amazing in our community.
They were starting a pilot program, and that pilot program was mental health court. And I figured, well, nothing else worked, might as well, you guys got me, you know, there's nothing else I can do.
So a lot of the treatment courts and the alternative programs that are out there are operating on their own now. They're out there, and they had been from the start. Our organization was really pushing for their existence, and now we continue to push for their additional funding so that there's not a waiting list, and that more people can get into these programs.
For too often in our culture, we have identified mental illness as a weakness. And therefore, if you are weak, you don't come out and admit to everyone that you are weak. When really we know that mental illness has nothing to do with whether you're strong or weak.
A person is not defined by their illness. So if we want to look at it graphically, we could say this is the whole person, and we could say this part is their illness or difficulty. And here's their, whatever their crime and criminal problem is, right? Their social problem.
And eliminating the stigma, I think, is really the challenge. Really educating people that people with mental illness doesn't make them bad people. It's just the same as if they had diabetes or, you know, some other disease. It's no different. We're treatable. We do recover. We do. There's quite a few amazing people that were suffering with mental illness their whole lives, and we're very, very successful.